Hey, today I'm going to answer the question, can one person run a nonprofit? Let's get into this one. Hey y'all, this is Tiffany with Boss on a Budget. I help new and small nonprofits get up and running. If you need help with your nonprofit, make sure you have subscribed to this channel because I drop videos every week. And so I wanted to conquer this topic. This is a juicy one. This is a touchy subject for a lot of people, but let's break it down so people understand what it really means to run a nonprofit. So again, I wanted to answer the question, can one person run a nonprofit? And what I mean by that is, can one person run a nonprofit alone? So basically, no board, it's just you running the show. Is that possible? Can that be? All right. And before I give you the answer, because I know you're waiting for me to tell you the answer, but before I do that, I just want to make sure you know that you need to refer to your state law when it comes to how your nonprofit is supposed to operate. So often state law will speak to the parameters around how you're supposed to operate, how your board is supposed to operate as a nonprofit. And as always, you need to do your own research. You need to know this information for yourself. Don't just rely on what people are telling you, but also go to the source. Go to the IRS, go to the Secretary of State's office in your state so you can know for yourself how this is supposed to be. And just to annoy you, I just want to tell you one more thing. I want you to wait to the end of this video because I have one piece of advice that I'll give a nonprofit founder who wants to run a nonprofit on their own, who don't want to worry about, the board. They don't want to deal with all of that. I want to give you a piece of advice if you feel that way. So the answer to the question, can one person run a nonprofit alone? Generally, the answer is no. And I'm going to break this down a couple of different ways. All right. And I'm also going to talk about what should be and then what happens sometimes when it comes to nonprofits. So first things first, I want to rephrase the question. Instead of saying, can one person run a nonprofit? The question should be, should one person run a nonprofit? And absolutely not. I am firm on that stance that one person should not be running a nonprofit solo. This is not you're not a solopreneur. This is not your own business, and you should not be running it alone. But it's for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's hard. Let's just get that out the way. Like, any nonprofit founder watching this right now is not going to tell you that it's easy maintaining a nonprofit. They may say it's rewarding. They may say it's worth it. But most people are not going to say it's easy. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of things you have to stay on top of, right? That most people don't even understand when they're getting into the nonprofit business. So the first answer to that question, should you be doing it, is absolutely not, because it's so difficult and it's so much work that you need to rely on people in order to get the work done. Next, I want to tell you that it's not designed to be that way. Nonprofits were not designed to have one person running the show. Now, I'm talking specifically about 501c3 public charities. Just keep in mind, there are a lot of different types of nonprofits, and there are a lot of different types of tax exempt statuses. So watch this video that I'm linking above. I go over what is a nonprofit so you can have a basic understanding of that. But I want you to know that when I'm talking today, I'm referring to 501c3 tax exempt public charities. They are not designed to have one person running the show, calling all the shots, making all the decisions. When you decide that you want to be a tax-exempt organization, you agree to certain things. And one of the things you agree to is that your organization is not set up to benefit one person. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose of you creating a nonprofit is not to benefit you as the founder. If you're doing it that way, if you're doing it as a way to make money, it's my stance that that's just not what it was designed to do. Now, you're going to run across some people who are like, nonprofits were set up to be tax shelters for people. Nonprofits were set up for the rich to hide their money. Okay, maybe there are some people who do that. But the intention behind it all, the spirit behind it all, is for it to be based on community. It's for it to be run and owned by the community, by the public. So the very thought of only one person having control over the decisions of the organization does not align with the purpose of a nonprofit. And then the next thing is the IRS just does not want you to do that, right? So everything that the IRS asks of you in terms of good governance points to you not being the only person to benefit in some way. So let's talk about conflict of interest. The IRS wants you to have a conflict of interest policy in place to make sure that decisions aren't being made to benefit someone unfairly, and to make sure there are checks and balances to see that if there's potential for someone to benefit from a decision that the nonprofit needs to make, that there's someone watching and monitoring that just to make sure that that decision doesn't do that, right? So that's what conflict of interest is all about. The IRS also recommends you have at least 3 people on your board. Now, there are some states that in order to incorporate as a nonprofit, you only need 1 person to set up an organization. And so that's where some people probably get tripped up and say, well, they didn't require any other board members, so I can do this on my own. But once you get to the IRS, they do not like to see less than 3 people who serve on a board. And you're doing yourself an injustice by putting those red flags out there. So there are certain things that you can do that the IRS will flag that will put you in a position that you don't want to be in, where the IRS may put more scrutiny on you. So one of those things is not having enough board members. Another one of those things is having too many people who are related or affiliated with each other serve on the board. Another one of those things is not having a conflict of interest policy in place and not managing that, not having a process or documenting your process to do that. And another way is how you select your executive director and how you select compensation for that person. These are all things that are signals to the IRS. They tell you what they believe is good governance, and you need to align yourself with what they believe is good governance. Otherwise, you really do put yourself at risk. Now, when you heard me say, can 1 person run a nonprofit? In your mind, you might have thought I was talking about the executive director, right? Well, it can be 1 executive director and running an organization, right? Well, yes, but just remember that as an executive director, you are not the final say in the decisions that happen with the nonprofit. Honestly, the buck stops with the board. Now, the board doesn't need to make day-to-day decisions for the nonprofit if there are staff in place like the executive director. That is the role of the executive director, to help manage the day-to-day responsibilities and manage the staff that are carrying out the day-to-day responsibilities. So the board in its role has oversight, just making sure that those things are getting taken care of. So you may think as an executive director, because you're the chief officer of the organization, that you're running things, but you still need a board in place, because that board's role is to provide oversight over your role as the chief officer. If you want to know more about board responsibilities, I always have a video for you, okay? So I'm linking another video that talks about what is the board of directors, and I go a little bit into the responsibilities of the board, and I also have a board's masterclass. So I did a whole 2.5-hour class on boards, also covered kind of how to recruit board members as well. So if you want that, you can check out the link below in the description box. The last point I want to make about all of this is that you have to remember that when a board is serving, there are certain duties that they are held to. And one of those duties is the duty of loyalty. And it means that that board member must have loyalty to the organization and not to 1 person. So their loyalty is not to the founder. So even though the founder may be a good person, even though they may really like the founder, if the founder is not making decisions, say like they're in the executive director role, if they're not making decisions that positively benefit or that may damage the nonprofit, then the board has a duty to the organization first. They have the duty to the organization's interest and making sure the organization is following its mission. If it's not, then they have a responsibility to do something about that, to change that. So again, if you're thinking, this is my nonprofit, I started it, this is my idea, I'm running this, right? There's still certain levels in place and checks and balances that have to be in place in order for you to be compliant as a tax-exempt organization. Now, are you ready for my piece of advice, or are you already sick of me and you're ready to turn the video off? Either way, I still want to give my piece of advice when it comes to running a nonprofit. The best piece of advice I can give you is to remember that you don't have complete and total ownership of the organization. So as soon as possible, you need to remove yourself a little bit. Now, I'm not saying remove yourself in terms of remove your passion, because nobody's going to be as passionate about you. Nobody's going to go as hard as you. So I'm not saying necessarily remove yourself in that way, but you got to give space for other people to come in, to build with you, to brainstorm with you, to develop ideas with you, to develop the mission and the vision with you, because they have to make decisions collectively with you on the best interests of the organization. And you want to make sure you're picking people who are aligned with your vision, with the original vision of where you want this to go. So you need to spend time on identifying the right people to go on this journey with you. So instead of worrying about who's going to take something from you or what's going to happen is going to happen. You need to put your focus on making sure you are finding the right people, like I said, who are aligned with your vision, who share the same motivation as you in terms of seeing what you want to see, the outcomes that you're looking for your nonprofit. And you just need to make sure that you give people space to be able to make decisions with you. You're not a dictator in this. It's not just about your opinion and your decisions. And I know that's really, really hard to hear, but the sooner you can let people in, the sooner you can lend yourself or open yourself up to that, the sooner you'll be able to grow and scale as a nonprofit, because you're welcoming new ideas, fresh perspectives, new networks, and things that can help you grow. So don't be so tight-fisted with your nonprofit. You're going to have to let some things go. And honestly, if you are that concerned about ownership, if you're that concerned about people making decisions on things that you've created, you may not need a nonprofit. You may need to think about having a different kind of business entity, all right? And also make sure you check out this video that I'm linking above, because I did talk about, can nonprofit founders be voted out? How does that happen? How does that work? Because that video may help you as well. All right, y'all. So I hope this information was helpful for you. If you have questions for me, you can visit me at www.bossonabudget.com. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video.